Hello, my name is C0LONIALISM from Edukea Tanzania. I'm a History 2 advanced level teacher. So welcome to proceed with our topic, which is neocolonialism and the question of underdevelopment in the third world countries. On the last session, we ended on looking the concept of underdevelopment and how that concept was defined by two scholars, Ganda Frank and Walter Rodney, and they come up with various writings to explain underdevelopment, especially in economic underdevelopment in third world countries and the Caribbean countries or America on America or in Latin America. So now let us continue with the characteristics of underdevelopment in the third world countries. What are the characteristics or features which characterize that third world countries are still underdeveloped? The first characteristic is low per capita income. The per capita income, it is just the average of every person which must be used or which have to use annually. So it is just individual expenditure annually in the nation. So it is just among of the characteristics of underdevelopment in the third world countries. In which means, for example, in 20,000 African average gross domestic product (GDP), was at $1,800 annually, while Europe was $8,800 annually. It means that you can see there is the difference. There is a difference between the less developed countries and the developed countries or the imperialistic powers. So that indicates that in third world countries they are still under development because the gross domestic product is lower or is lower than those of developed countries. Another characteristic is life expectancy. It is life expectancy. It means that the period which a person is expected to live in the world, it is expected for 39 years for less developed countries or in third world countries, but in Western or European countries or developed countries, it is about 79 years. The expected years to live by the Europeans or the developed countries people. So you can see that in the less developed countries, the life expectancy it is lower than in the life expectancy of the developed countries. What is the cause of that? The low life expectancy, just the occurrence of diseases or dangerous diseases which Africans fail to combat it, and the malnutrition problem which face most third world countries. For example, many Africans die on average of 39 years, while Europe life expectancy is 79 years. So this is another characteristics of underdevelopment in the third world countries. Another, it is high literacy and ignorance rate. It means that in the third world countries, the illiteracy or poor education base to the majority of third world countries is higher than those developed countries, and the ignorance of not knowing something, it is higher than, or the rate of illiteracy and ignorance rate is higher than compared to those developed countries. So that led to to the underdevelopment of the third world countries, whereby the people of that nations have no enough skills, or they are not equipped with enough skills and knowledge which will invest in the discoveries and the discoveries and coming up with the best ways of improving their living and their economic strategies or affairs. So in one way or another, it is just related to the underdevelopment. This high illiteracy rates and ignorance is just because of the adoption of the Western or imperialistic education system, which is contrary or different from the environment of third world countries, because they found themselves, or those third world countries including Tanzania, they found themselves that they are using the system which does not go hand in hand with the African or third world countries environment. So that led to the absence of discoveries, innovations, due to the poor and the low skills which are imparted in the education, or the benefits of third world countries' education system. Another, it is economic dependence. It means that in the third world countries there is the problem of economic dependence. It means that the economy of third world countries just depending on abroad from financial aids, loans, and grants from the international monetary funds, so international financial organization. So you can see that that problem of economic dependence led to the underdevelopment of third world countries. On how economic dependence led to the underdevelopment, it means that those nations or less developed countries are being granted loans or given loans by those international financial organizations like International Monetary Funds and World Bank, by harsh conditions and high interest rates, which led to the stagnation of the economy, because the money or the profit which they made, they just return back to the paying of the loans which have been provided by those superpowers or imperialistic powers. So in one way or another, that situation of economic dependence to other nations or developed nations or abroad or imperialistic powers led to the underdevelopment, because if you want to develop, just depend on yourself, or be independent organ in order to make you to move from one place to another. So in that way, the third world countries fall under development problem. Another, it is weak technology and the poor industrial base. It means that in third world countries, we witness that there is poor or weak technology and the poor industrial base, in which weak technology and the poor industrial base led to the underdevelopment. It is in the way that the presence of weak technology or weak technology led to the poor innovations, poor discoveries, and on the tools and equipments which are used in the production of various goods in third world countries. So that led to the production of low quality products, low quantity products. So you can see that the development cannot be achieved through the use of weak technology. For example, in the agricultural sector, the use of machines is no longer in third world countries. They just use the local tools in production, but maybe in this time they are just importing the technology from outside, like machines. farming machines, crop harvesters, seed drills from imperial powers or imperialist powers. So in one way or another, weak technology led to the underdevelopment. But poor industrial base. In third world countries, there is a poor industrial base, where in third world countries there are accumulation of processing industries which do not produce the heavy goods or advanced products like ships, cars, phones, agricultural machines or farming machines, and the other products or goods which need the heavy industrial production. So in Africa there is poor industrial base because of presence of processing industries that process the agricultural products, be processed and be exported to the metropoles or abroad. So you can find that those industries or those simple industries or processing industries cannot contribute in one way or another to the development of third world countries. So that made or that marked the underdevelopment of the third world countries. Another, it is monoculture economies. It means that in the third world country they just involve themselves in the production of a single cash crop. For example, in Tanzania, in some regions they just keep in the production of cash crop, of one cash crop. Like in Kagera, they just produce coffee as the cash crop, and for some extent they just produce at low quantity of coffee as a cash crop. And in some regions like in Shinyanga and Mwanza, they produce cotton, which is cash crop for production of cash or for commerce. And in Morogoro and the Tanga, they produce sisal as the cash crop, where they involve themselves in the production of a single cash crop. So in that sense, in one way or another, by producing of one cash crop, you cannot develop in the agricultural sector because you will fall on the low production. The agricultural sector will never move from one place to another because they're involving themselves in production of the cultivation of single cash crop. So in many third world countries, they fall under this catastrophe, which is monoculture economies, and that led to the underdevelopment in the third world countries. But another, it is external domination of countries' political and economic affairs. It means that the external domination of countries' political and economic affairs, that means that the third world countries' economies and the politics are intervened by the external domination. It means that the imperialist powers intervene the economic and the political affairs of the third world countries. For example, in many third world countries, the imperialistic powers or capitalist powers has introduced the various political affairs, like the adoption of multi-party system or introduction of multi-party system. As in we Tanzanians, we adopted that system in 1992, and the implementation was in 1995 under the general election, when Benjamin William Mkapa became the president of Tanzania. So you can see that the multi-party system, or the having of many or multiple political parties, was adopted. And once you see the constitutions of the many third world countries, it's just the result of their former colonial masters. It means that the constitutions and the laws which governing those governments or countries, they just adapted from are being copied from the constitution which were governing the government during the colonial era. So you can see in one way or another they are still interfered by the external domination. And in economic affairs, you see that the economy of many third world countries are interfered by the imperialistic powers. For example, the IMF and the World Bank, or International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, are just interfering in the economic affairs of many third world countries, whereby once they want to borrow or they want to get loans, they are priced or they are fall under the harsh conditions and the high interest rates that led to the underdevelopment of third world countries. And for example, in Libya, under Muammar Gaddafi wanted to establish or to introduce the Bank of Africa, which will supervise and operate all financial matters in Africa. And the result was making or suspecting Gaddafi as a dictator, because they seen that leader is going to destroy us by establishing the African Bank, which will prohibit or which will stop the third world countries to come and borrow money or borrow financial assistance from the International Monetary Funds and the World Bank. So that is the external domination in countries' political and economic affairs. This is done through World Bank and the IMF and through unilateral institutions like European Union and the European Union and the United Nations organizations, where they place various conditions to condition the third world countries on how they will operate on economic and the political affairs. Another, it is low currency value. It means that the third world countries' currency is just having low value. For example, the currency of us or of Tanzania is just lower or have low value compared to those of developed countries. For example, the $1 is equal to 2,400 point something Tanzanian shillings. So you can see that $1 it is equal to 2,400 point something, 0.5 or point something Tanzanian shillings. So you can see how the imperialistic powers currency just having high value than the third world countries' currency. So you can see that in the one way or another, it led to the underdevelopment in the third world countries. So after looking the characteristics of underdevelopment in third world countries, let us see the causes of underdevelopment in developing nations or third world countries or less developed countries. The cause of underdevelopment in the third world countries is categorized into two, namely internal and the external factors or external causes. It means the causes that led to the underdevelopment in developing countries or nations have been divided into two categories, which is internal factors and the external factors. By starting with internal factors or internal causes, there is political instabilities or political unrest. It means that, for example, Rwanda, Congo, Nigeria, Somalia, and the other third world countries have been fall under the political instabilities, whereby those imperialistic powers, whereby there is the civil wars, sorry, not the imperialist powers. We just deal with internal factors. So political instabilities, where those civil wars just occurring when the specific or particular nation is just in crashing, where the tribes or tribal wars is just taking place. For example, in Rwanda, the Hutu and the Tutsi were fighting on the issue of land and cattle, because the agriculturists who are the Hutu were fighting against the pastoralists who the Tutsi. So these conflicts led to the underdevelopment, or caused underdevelopment, because in keeping themselves in fighting or wars cannot bring about development, because people will fear to produce in different economic activities. Another example, in Congo, there is political instabilities which was started in 1960. Until now, Congo, it is under the political unrest, and the main factor for that political unrest are just imperialistic powers, ensuring they are exploiting the third world countries, but they force those third world countries to follow under the conflicts or political unrest. So you can see in Nigeria, Somalia, there are civil wars whereby the government of Somalia they are just fighting with just a group of people who just want to overthrow the existing government under the circumstances which are just taking place, which are not maybe the syllable, or which is not the syllable, or it is undesirable to the people of the respective country. Another, it is extravagance and the embezzlement of public funds. It means that the extravagance and the embezzlement of the public funds led to the underdevelopment. In which way? The way that the third world countries leaders, they found themselves that they are just embezzling and using the public funds for their luxurious life, or for their public gains. So you can see that there are some leaders who are being planted by the imperialistic powers in the respective countries, and so that leaders they just use that public funds for their individual gains, for their individual collect, or for their individual wealth. So they just ready for those funds which could be used in other economic activities, like in agriculture or industry or fishing or transportation activities, could be used in there, and they just use them in their interest. For example, Mobutu Sese Seko of Zaire from 1960s to 1990s, where the leader who was planted by the imperialistic powers after the assassination of the existing leader of Patrice Lumumba. So you can see that where the leader who is an example of those who use the public funds for their private gains. But another internal factor, of course, is the presence of killer diseases like AIDS and the malaria, as well as epidemic diseases like cholera and typhoid. So you can see that the presence of killer diseases like HIV/AIDS and the malaria, these are diseases which are mass killing the people, and the less developing countries, they use more efforts on combating those killer diseases to rescue their majority of their population. So in one way or another, they found themselves, they are just investing much money. They're investing a lot of money on how they will come up with best strategies and solutions to curb or to combat these killer diseases and epidemic diseases like cholera. So in one way or another, the development of the third country is being affected or caused by the presence of killer diseases. Another is presence of natural calamities. Natural calamities is another cause of underdevelopment in the third world countries or developing nations. It means that, for example, the natural calamities like earthquake, floods, drought, and other natural calamities that led to the underdevelopment in third world countries, whereby after eating of those natural calamities like floods will lead to the government to use a lot of money in assisting the people who have affected by those natural calamities. For example, in 1974, a severe drought hit Niger to crop failure that led to crop failure and the death of about 40% of our cattle. So you can see an example of the drought which hit Niger in 1974, which was among of the natural disasters. So in one way or another led to the government to decrease on the economy, whereby the crops and the cattle were distracted by the drought. So that led to the decline in the economy of Niger by that year. But another is poor education system. Another internal factor for underdevelopment in developing countries, it is poor education system. The education system which is present in third world countries is poor because they just use the outdated and Western education system, which are not resemble with or go hand in hand with the existing government in their environment. So, for example, in many third world countries, they just use the outdated and the Western syllabus, which do not supposed to plant the skills and the knowledge to the third world countries learners or professionals after they graduate from universities and colleges. They find themselves, they depend on waiting for be employed by the government, something which is difficult to get employed by the government. So they fail to involve themselves in individual discoveries and innovation of various opportunities or employment opportunities which they can involve themselves for surviving. So that's another cause of underdevelopment in third world countries. And the last one, or the last cause or internal factor for underdevelopment in third world countries, it is rapid population increase. The rapid population increase means that this is the result of increasing in population, whereby the population of third world countries increase and exceed the expected population that can be assisted or that can be controlled by the government to provide the social services and other needed assistance or services in the country. For example, in the provision of social services like hospital, you can find that the hospital is just there for saving the 1,000 people or 100 people, but the population of that area is just 5,100 people. So you can find it is just difficult to save that population, and that led to the underdevelopment because of poor health service of the population which exists on the particular area. For example, the estimation or the statistical data of the world just telling that about 70% of world population is just from third world countries or less developed countries. That is the main source or cause of underdevelopment. So after looking the internal factors or causes for underdevelopment in developing countries, there is an exercise here which is explain the characteristics of underdevelopment in less developed or less developing countries in. So this is the end of our session. Thank you for watching me, thank you for listening me, and I welcome you to the next lesson, and thank you for choosing Edukea Tanzania. Bye bye, have a good time.